When I started watching tape to prepare for this video, there was one thing that instantly jumped out at me. The only way to move the ball against this Seattle defense is keep the ball away from the middle of the field. Let me show you why with this play. It's going to be a run through the A or B gap, and Minnesota's going to be running a zone blocking scheme on this one. However, one thing that's interesting to look at here is look where Seattle's defensive tackles are lined up. They have one in a nose technique and the other in a two technique on the left half of the screen. Because of this, Minnesota's right guard is going to be forced to take on a defensive tackle. Typically, you would want him to move up the guard to Mike. However, since he's not, this is essentially going to mean that Minnesota's right tackle is going to have to move over to block him, which is bad news for the Vikings. You're actually going to see Dalvin Cook do a great job of almost getting out of this situation. Despite Dalvin Cook doing a great job to avoid the initial tackle, Seattle still has two defenders right in that area. And while that play certainly wouldn't have worked as well had Minnesota been running a man blocking scheme, it was a great job by Seattle to take advantage of the situation they were in and make a tackle for a loss. One of the teams that actually had some success against the Seattle defense was the Carolina Panthers. However, they had a bit of a head-scratching play call on this one. They're going to have two pretty unforgivable mistakes on the same play. First off, it's designed to have a one-on-one matchup with their center designed to block Reed, which just seems like a huge mistake. They're also going to leave Bobby Wagner unblocked, which is just one of those things you should almost never do against the Seahawks. As you see, Reed easily wins his matchup, and now McCaffrey's in trouble. Frank Clark's now in the area, and Seattle now has two linebackers, both who could potentially make a play. There's nowhere for McCaffrey to go, and he ends up getting stopped for no gain. Clearly, the way to attack the Seattle defense is not by relying on your offensive linemen to make one-on-one blocks. You really have to do your best to avoid Wagner and Reed. Look at this example of how you can attack the Seattle defense. First off, Seattle's running a pretty basic cover 2 zone with a shadow on a receiver. Initially, it's going to be a play-action pass, and Gurley's going to run through the top half of the screen. From there, the guy to look at is KJ Wright. As you see here, Jared Goff's going to do a great job of looking off KJ Wright. I'll flip to the other angle so you can get a better view of it, but as you see, it looks very clear that Goff is going to be throwing straight to the middle of the field. Meanwhile, Gurley is going to simply just step up into the flat. What's going to help sell this play is that the Rams do have a receiver running into a KJ Wright zone. Since KJ Wright now thinks that there could be a man open behind him, he's going to end up running upfield. This allows Los Angeles to simply just flip it to Gurley, who's able to run for a big gain. KJ Wright isn't a bad player by any means. After all, he is a Pro Bowler. However, he's suffered from injuries and hasn't been 100% really all year, and even when he is 100%, he's just nowhere on Wagner's level. If you can avoid Bobby Wagner and get KJ Wright being the guy who has to make plays instead, it allows for mistakes to happen for Seattle. That play was an example of how Sean McVay decided to attack the Seattle defense. Now let's move over to how another good offensive-minded coach, Kyle Shanahan, decided to attack it. The first thing the 49ers are going to do here is send a man in motion. And since no Seattle defender follows him, that means that the 49ers have a pretty good idea that it's going to be zone coverage. This is the route concept that the 49ers will be running. It's worth noting that there's two routes and just two Seattle defenders. This means that the 49ers can simply send their halfback to the top half of the screen, and there will be no one directly in the area. The Niners are then going to move up their left guard and center, which will allow them to block Seattle defenders. On a play like this, the most crucial block is on an outside linebacker, which means Wagner isn't as important on this play. And if you can neutralize Wagner's talents, it's really going to be a key to how you can win this game. On paper, keeping everything to the outside makes a ton of sense. However, the problem with that is who they're playing. The Cowboys are a team that loves to just run up the gut, which could be a big problem. I watched the Dallas game against Tampa Bay and decided to plot out each time Elliott got a touch. This is what it was the first 20 times he touched the ball. As you see, all 14 times he rushed it, it was in between the tackles. 3 of those pass attempts were also all in the area where Wagner could make a play. Only 3 out of the first 20 times he touched the ball were away from the mic. Now granted, it is worth mentioning that part of that could have been a game plan. After all, the way to attack Tampa's defense is probably the opposite, as they have a great outside linebacker in Levante David, and they struggle a middle linebacker since Quan Alexander and Beckwith have been out for the whole year. But they also have 2 good defensive tackles in Gerald McCoy and Vita Vea. So this clearly still is a big way that Dallas runs their offense. On Elliott's last 5 rushes, 3 of them actually ended up being outside the tackles. However, one of Elliott's best rushes from inside the tackles wasn't exactly because of how it was drawn up. What you see on the screen is the gap that each Buccaneer is assigned to be guarding. Buccaneers safety Andrew Adams is actually going to make a pretty poor play on this one. This is designed to be a run through the left side, and Adams is actually going to figure it out pretty quickly and try to get over to that side. The way this play was initially drawn up is Dallas was going to have their right guard and tackle both make one-on-one blocks and leave the defensive end on the right side of the field completely unblocked. However, because of Adams' mistake, there's now a wide open gap, and Elliott's able to just take it for a big gain. That was a big play, but something that probably won't end up working against better linebackers like Seattle has. This next play will also help me explain my point. As you see, it's a run to the right B gap, and Dallas is going to try to double team Gerald McCoy to get him out of the way. They're also going to have a tight end block a defensive end, and another tight end block a linebacker. Now the guy to watch is Jason Pierre-Paul. He's going to be able to win his matchup pretty well, and is essentially able to two-gap here. No matter which way Elliott goes on this one, Pierre-Paul will be able to get a hand on him and probably bring him down. However, this play wasn't run perfectly by Tampa Bay. As you see, Brent Grimes was kind of lazy in getting into position here. He really should be right here right now. But since he's not, it's going to allow Elliott to completely get to the outside. From there, he turns the corner and is able to pick up some big yards. I'm showing this play to show that Elliott isn't just a north and south runner. He can go east and west very well. In that game against Tampa Bay, 16 of the 19 total runs were inside the tackles. In those first 13 plays when they were all inside the tackles, he ended up with 4.09 yards per carry. However, in those last 5, where 3 were outside the tackles, he got up to 6.4 yards per carry. Now granted, you expect a little bit more yards per carry if someone breaks to the outside, because that gives you a bigger chance to make a big play. It still goes to show that Elliott can be very effective running to the outside. Not only can Elliott be very good at running to the outside, but Dallas is a very good screen pass team. They had maybe the best executed screen pass all season week 4 against Detroit. Here's what happened on it. First, they sent the receiver in motion, and since the Lion followed him, the Cowboys knew that it was man coverage. Dak Prescott fakes a handoff, which brings Lions defenders in. Dallas is also going to have another receiver break to the middle of the field downfield. This is going to force the Lion who's guarding him to move upfield with him. Then Elliott is simply going to run a basic flat route to the bottom half of the screen. The Lions now have 2 defenders who will be unblocked. However, Dallas is going to send both their guards and their center up the lead block for Elliott. Because of this, it allows them not only to block the first linebacker in the area, it allows them to double team him. I don't care if that's Bobby Wagner, and quite frankly, I don't care if that's Ray Lewis. Getting out of a double team is very difficult to do, especially with that much space. From there, Dallas still has an offensive lineman to block another Lion, and whoever takes on the least amount of that double team can still move up to block another Lion. This play ends up being too easy for Elliott. He doesn't get touched until he's inside the 5, and he's able to get a touchdown out of it. It was a huge play by the Cowboys, and if they run a lot of plays like that, it could just be the key to them beating Seattle.
Real.